So it was back in 2019 when I started to explore my eroticism through my creativity, which I think I always have. I get up every morning, I dance, and I love Britney, Madonna, and every other female pop star out there who's sexual and erotic. And I always wanted to do that in a more real way for myself. So when I started doing burlesque in 2019, I had the thrill of being on a stage, and I also loved being in front of a camera. There was something about it that my exhibitionist side came out. I did, however, feel like I always needed to do it in a way that feels good in my body to perform. So at that time, too, once I started to put myself out there more as a performer, there was photographers here in the city in Toronto who loved shooting guys who were up for making erotic art. So I was down for it. I was up for it when guys started to ask me to do it. So I would do it. And, there was a few shoots where I felt like I didn't feel comfortable in my body. And it wasn't about the photographer. I think it was just more about what they liked in the work that they made. So I remember the first time that I got to shoot with my friend Karim, and I had never met him before in person. Well, I think we probably chatted on Instagram or something. And he was taking photos of guys and of everyone. And I saw his work. I loved it. I thought it was really beautiful. And so when I went to work with him, it was really great because I know he likes movement and shapes and lines with the models' bodies, and so he's really great at just being able to guide you through these different movements. I always felt in that moment that it was a practice of intimacy with Kareem and him making me feel safe in my body to do what it wanted to do, where I felt I wanted to go with it as well. So it really felt like this connection in between the two of us. And so consequently, I've shot with him so many times before, and a big part is I feel safe with him. I love what he does, and a big part of that is because of who he is. Kareem is an activist. He's a beautiful artist. He's always open and talking about what he believes in. Not afraid to share his views and opinions on what's going on in the world. And I think just one of these guys who stands up for vulnerable populations out there. So this is why I love Kareem, and we had a really great conversation, and really excited for you to check it out. All right. Hey, Kareem. How are you doing?
Hey, Vance, how are you?
Good. How
Hmm.
are you feeling today?
Good, good, good. Seasonal affective is very real in this
Oh,
winter of
yeah.
ours. Yeah. So today is one of
I
those days.
yeah, I was seeing your post lately about
Hmm.
the weather and how cold it is when we're shooting this. It's like pretty minus 10 or colder the last week.
Honestly, I know winter is coming. I'm just never ready for it, and I feel like the older I've gotten, the less ready I am for it every year.
Uh-huh.
So this year in particular, I'm like, I do not want to do this at all, like at all.
See, it's so funny because so I think this is where we actually differ
Hmm.
is that I love
The winter.
like I love January and I love
Oh my
winter
God.
for the reason of that I don't feel any pressure. So
Mm,
I feel like I can stay in my apartment for 3 days
yeah.
straight and
Yeah.
not feel like I should go out and do something.
A lot. Mm.
Well, that's actually good to bring into like my first question. What I want to talk to you
Good.
about
Mm.
is, well, do you consider yourself an introvert?
I am. I am. Like I I would say I really like to spend time by myself a lot. And I really, it's not that I distance people from myself. I just know what my thresholds are with people. And I think I like to engage with people. I like to be around people in kind of like metered doses. I'm not someone that can actively be in a public setting with 100 people around me for a very long period of time. Like my social battery tends to drain really quickly. I also, because I tend to be a lot in my head, it's easier for me to be kind of like on my own because I don't have to justify why maybe I'm silent all of a sudden or why I'm, kind of like just in this weird headspace. I also just tend to like to also, I like activities that kind of just involve myself. I used to be a gamer growing up a lot, and so that's easy for me to kind of become that way when I'm on my own. I don't have to explain that to anyone. I think in a relationship, it's hard because you have to explain to your partner who is also with you during those quieter moments why suddenly you want to be alone for the next 6 hours of a day. But also, I like, even when I am outside, like even when I am exploring, I tend to be in my zone, which is why I think if you've ever run into me on the street, I look like a zombie because I'm either like immensely stoned or I'm just like, or I'm just like, I'm in my head so much that I'm not paying attention to like everything that's going on around me.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
like because
yeah.
I love being alone, and I've always been that way
Mm,
since I was a kid.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I just like spending time with myself. And whenever I smoke a joint,
Mhm.
the initial thing for the next 15 minutes is
Yeah.
I sit on my couch and I have a conversation with myself.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden it'll be this like I don't know, it'll be something in the news or something that's happening that I'll have
Mhm.
a full on conversation with
Yeah.
myself, and I actually enjoy it. And it's like I'm processing my thoughts. But
It's
also the
true.
reason why like I like to be alone is because I tend to be more of a
Mm,
um deeper thinker conversation, and
very
I've
true.
been told in my life that I'm like too much. But
Yeah.
so I know that like the reason why I don't want to go to a house party
Yeah.
where like, it's 50 people or 20 people or
Mm,
whatever, large amount of people, is because I know that that's not the place for like, hey, so what do
mhm.
you think about all these like
But yeah.
what do you think
Yeah.
about the war in Gaza right now? Like, it's like I know it's
Yeah.
not the place, but I'm
No.
like, I don't know how to have a like,
Yeah.
oh, so how's work? Good. Oh yeah, so you went on
Mm,
vacation. Yeah. Oh, you went
yeah.
PV? Yeah, great, great, great. Like so I've
No,
started to
no,
feel
no.
like
You're so right. You're
it's more
so
work
right.
for me. So I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, this just
Yeah.
isn't my place. And
Absolutely. Like, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and back to like the season thing is
Mm,
like it's so funny because in the summer the reason why like I like summer, but
mm,
I also by the end of summer I'm like I'm glad it's done because there's pressure that I feel like I should be going to
mhm.
hang out with people or doing things with people, and but then I'm like you don't like that, like you don't you don't want to be spending every
No.
day with someone.
It's true. Like I think it makes you realize a lot of things. I think in the summer because there is that freedom to what the summer is. Like it's
Uh-huh.
very like uninhibited, which is great about it. But also to your point about like, having to go out and actually like really disengage and kind of become another person just in a particular social setting. Yeah, that's something I don't think I've ever enjoyed. I don't think I've ever done things for the sake of doing things. I think you have to feel that element of authenticity to people. People have to be real with you. Nothing frustrates me more than people being inauthentic with you. I don't really respond well to anyone presenting a front, right? Like even if it's someone that I'm going to be dating, obviously, like when you come for that first date or that first interaction, you be you. Like I think what will keep me engaged with you is even in the faltering of your honesty. I will find that infinitely more attractive than when you are continuously trying to be, someone else and you're putting on stunts and shows. That it does not appeal to me. It's also one of the difficulties I've had, even being on social media is always the fact that people are not themselves on the internet, right?
Uh-huh.
And that element of it is so hard to kind of reconcile because when you do actually meet them, sometimes it's very disappointing. It's almost like the fantasy has died. You're like, oh my God, like I thought this was this person and then this is not who they are. So I think if everyone like led with that element of authenticity, I think it would be key. I think it's the key to establishing anything that's worthwhile and long term. Like that's yeah, it's just the base level
Yeah.
expectation.
Yeah, and the thing with social media is I've learned to always say to
Mm,
myself is
mm,
like none of this is real because it's the
none.
same thing what you said is that like I've met people and I'm like, "Oh, well, you're completely different from
Mhm.
what I expected," or
Yeah.
you're not anything the way you portray yourself. And I mean, and a lot of us are like selling our businesses and stuff, right? So it's like, it's something that's not even us.
Yeah.
But I know
Yeah.
that like a lot of people on social media that will post the ones that just use it for their personal, like
Mhm.
posting, I'm out doing this, or like, oh, out
Yeah.
with birthday party thing. I'm like, even that's not real. I'm like, because when I've
No.
been in those spaces with those people, I'm like, this is not the way it looked on Instagram or whatever,
No.
right? So I'm
No.
always
It
like, it's all not real.
No, it's not. It is a fantasy. That's the joy of it. That's what keeps you going back to it. Is the fact that you can build up these worlds around yourself. But I think more and more, like, as we are facing all of these difficulties with social media and with, we're coming to a lot of reconciliation right now about a lot of things in our lives. I think we also have to tell ourselves genuinely that, there needs to be more to this. There needs to be more to all of what is being presented to us. So yeah, like I genuinely feel like it's to our detriment at times. I also genuinely don't see, I'm obviously being critical of it, but not offering active solutions for it. Because the one thing I realized is that it's now inbuilt into who we are. It's a fabric, right? So it's hard to
Hmm.
kind of like detach yourself from it completely and say, I'm not doing social media or anything else, because to your point, like businesses depend on it, lives depend on it now. So it's a very like complicated space to be in. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, on that note,
Mm,
so I want to talk about how, you're pretty vocal in
mm,
talking about social issues,
mhm.
like lately, Palestine, Gaza.
Yeah,
But you've always been whatever's, going on and talking about
mm,
vulnerable groups in
yeah,
society.
yeah.
Um, so why do you feel that
Mm.
you need to, or where did that come from?
You know what? I genuinely feel like I think we all need to be talking about it, right? Like I think
Hmm.
there's a big human element to it that sometimes I feel like is lacking. And I think a lot of times when you are consuming news, it's very easy for you to not be looking at the news as a person. Like you look at the news through the lens of someone else and someone else's forged opinions of what this news now means to you. So when I receive that news, sometimes I'm like, no, like there's still a person within me that exists that needs to actually like take what I'm receiving and actually like, sometimes justify what this means to me, right?
Hmm.
And the reason I started talking about it more was because I felt more and more like I think it's important to give. It's not like the internet is your soapbox, which it genuinely is, but the reality is when I'm there talking about things, it's because I want to actually just make sure, even sometimes for myself, that I've actually like processed what is happening and what's going on. I also think more than anything, like growing up the way that I grew up, I was not necessarily like I would not call it a like an unfortunate upbringing in many ways, but I also felt like it was a very human upbringing. Like a lot of my childhood was not based on, like that's just how old I am, but it was not based on social media. It was not based on a processing of what news was, right? Like my parents would watch the news, but I think that we would talk a lot about what was happening in the news as opposed to just like watching it, absorbing it, and then just going away with it. Um,
Hmm.
I also just always felt more empathetic to the fact that there is a broader understanding of everything. Like every side has an explanation to it. I think that element of it, I think I still carry with me, and it's why I want to make sure that like you look at something more holistically. Like you cannot look at something so partially and just kind of come to an assessment on a half-baked plan. I think
Yeah.
that's also translated to what I do for work, because I work in design, and part of what you do as a designer is really you're very empathetic to a user's needs and how a user actually functions, which is the human side of all of our digital experiences. That's really key to me. So being able to like put all of that together is kind of why I keep talking about it a lot. I think you have to talk about the war in Palestine. I think you have to talk about issues relating to, social injustice, especially when it comes to our community. Being queer myself, I may not necessarily be facing some of the same difficulties maybe somebody that's more under resourced than me is facing, and that I think needs to kind of still be at the forefront, right? I also think genuinely, like, it's not that I have an audience of people. My following is like this tiny, you know, but I still feel like even if it is this tiny, I think I need to be the one that is still responsible to speak to some of these causes, because I think it bridges a lot of gaps for people. A lot of straight people follow me, right? And my
Yeah.
content is very gay. So I want straight people to feel like this is very normalized behavior. If you're going to engage with Kareem, and that is maybe the gateway into this, into understanding the queer world, it's that. The same thing with a lot
Uh-huh.
of Jewish people follow me, and I want you to understand that, like, when I do talk about Palestine, and when I am critical about Israel, I'm not saying that this is a holistic critique of a whole community of people, right? But I also want you to understand perspectives. So perspectives
Yeah.
are everything, and that's literally what I'm offering through the platform.
And also, like, if you want to speak on very complex issues, by the way,
Yeah.
that like you can't say something in 30 seconds or
No.
in one square block of a
No.
paragraph. And but everyone is going to have feelings and reactions to that one little piece.
Of
And then, because
course.
I know I do too, right? Like, I'll
Yeah.
see this one person saying something about, but what about Hamas or whatever? And
Mm.
I'm like, oh, fuck. And then I have a reaction, but I'm
Yeah.
like, wait a minute, there's so much more to that
Yeah.
that we're not having this
Yeah.
conversation of actually being able to like move forward with solutions because it is
Right.
so complex and trying to, and even when I think about like, like us in Canada, right, or in
Hmm.
Toronto, right, that we're as a society living together that might have differences of opinions, and maybe
Yeah.
some are just not understanding full facts of what
Hmm.
actually is going on. And there's a lot of that too, right? Is that we need to be able to have these conversations instead of just being, I'm
Mm.
right, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, and now we're stuck.
Yeah.
Now it doesn't even move forward.
Honestly, like that's the difficulty, right? Like the internet and social media as a whole is really great at making sure that you pick sides. It's almost like everything is so binary. Even our
Uh-huh.
issues as queer people appear to be existing on a binary when we at our messaging and in the forefront of our crucial understanding exists on a spectrum, right?
Uh-huh.
Understanding exists on a spectrum and nothing should ever be so binary. I think the one thing that I constantly feel like, I face a lot of the time is that people come in with very binary opinions of things where they're just feeling like it's one or the other. There are layers to everything. And so you need to be able to give yourself the space to understand that I have a spectrum of understanding of an issue, and then I'm making an assessment based on that spectrum of understanding. I also think you cannot outrightly I know at some point this is probably going to come back through someone who's really angry on the internet. They're going to come at me about this,
Uh-uh.
but I don't think you can outrightly discount everyone. You cannot just discount people off the bat, right? You exist in a society. The way that a society works is that it exists as a cumulative whole. The way that communities work is that it's about a whole. So people may not be in agreement with you. You may not be in agreement with people. And that's fine. And that's valid. But that doesn't mean that you discount these people. That doesn't mean that you villainize them and you kind of, have kind of relegated them to these very kind of, malice filled understandings. I think what has to happen is you have to acknowledge that there will always be a difference of opinion. And these people may not be the right for you, and that's valid. But at least give humans the base level human, reward of grace, right? Just give
Uh-huh.
them the space. If that's not your space, don't go there. You don't need to be there, right?
Uh-huh.
And people do respond to a lot of what it is I'm saying. I have a lot of Jewish friends who actually talk to me about a lot about what's happening. I think I'm very fortunate that I do have open-minded friends who actually are able to see both sides of the spectrum and are not quick to rush based on their childhood upbringing or their understandings or their faith. I also think a lot of people will know right off the bat. Like I've never been religious in any capacity, and I don't hold space for religion the same way a lot of people do. So
Uh-huh.
I think for me, like when they're coming at me to say something, I think a lot of people, because they know me, will understand that like Kareem doesn't hold faith in the same way, right? And so because of that, I think there's been more productive discussion. I think for productive discussion to happen, everyone needs to be open. There's like this really, I think a couple of years ago, I took this whole course on actually having productive conversations and the importance of productive conversation. But one of the examples that they give you is that, it's like going into water with people. Like if you're going to taint the water off the bat, and it's poisoned, when both of you go into that water, you're both dead. So rather than doing that, you have to be able to say to yourselves, I want to have a productive conversation. So before I start to like add anything to it,
Uh-huh.
let me give everyone the first dive and we both go in there and then we begin to figure it out. If during that time we taint the waters, that happens, right? But in the
Yeah.
beginning, you have to be able to like be as welcoming to someone else's opinion as you are about your own opinion. And yeah, the internet's very weird that way because the internet's really good at just, we're very good at weaponizing our opinion. So we just go in there and we're just like, boom, boom, boom. What's the worst thing that I could possibly say? And because you are behind the shield of a screen, you don't feel the actual impact of what it is you're saying, right? I think when you go on the internet, you really need to still be a human, the same way you would be in public. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I
I'm very curious to see what would happen if those people came at me in public and how that would
yeah. Um, all right, I'm gonna take a hard turn here and
do it.
talk about your artistic endeavors
But that,
of your photography, your
hey,
filmmaking that you do. Would you call it erotica? Would you call it what would you call it
uh,
actually?
good. It's a good question. I honestly don't know. Legitimately, like the way that I wanted this to start was just curiosity. I think that's just the way I do everything. I think I have to be curious about something, and I kind of will, that will kind of like give me the fuel to kind of continue to want to do it. And so it's really started with the curiosity about like making work that I think truly speaks to sex and sexuality. I think personally, like, and this is really funny to say, but I'm not someone that looked at my sexuality in a very critical way for a long time. I didn't
Uh,
examine it in that way. I just acknowledged this is who I am, this is what I do.
uh-huh.
And then I began to, obviously, like as time has gone on and the older we get, you become very introspective about certain things. And so I think sexuality was one of those things where I also felt, genuinely like I was holding myself back from exploring those elements of it. And I wasn't entirely sure why, because I felt maybe there's an element of shame. I was talking to my therapist about this one time, and she was like, maybe there's an element of shame in the back because, you genuinely were not looking at queer sex the way that a lot of people look at straight sex. And I was like, yeah, I think if a straight man was to look at sex in that way, I think it would obviously be more open, more welcome. So I think that kind of like sparked something within me to want to create around it. I also feel like I only create because it's something that I would be curious about doing, right? So what was great about it was I was very curious to meet people. And I think
Uh-huh.
people really drive 90% of what it is I do. So I wanted to feel like I needed to meet people, new people. I needed to understand people better. I needed to understand perspectives. I think we've talked a lot about today. I needed to understand perspectives better. So that's really what I wanted this to kind of become. And that's what it is. Genuinely, like it's such an exploration of whoever that person is.
Uh-huh.
I learn a lot. I think even when I worked with you, the couple of times that we worked together, that's how I've gotten to know who you are. I've gotten to know your world a little bit better. I feel like those learnings also make me a different person each time. I've left feeling like I need to reconsider so many things in my life differently.
Uh,
And that's really been the gift of it, is that I think it's given me the ability to look at myself a lot differently. And I think it's making me, it's evolving me, let's put it that way, into something completely different. I also think genuinely it's been great to connect with people who genuinely see sex as something to be celebrated and not something that necessarily needs to feel so repressed. I think when you are confident in who you are, confident in your body, confident in your sex and your sexuality, magically, and I really relate this back to like my day-to-day career. I feel like it will elevate you in all realms of your life. So it's easier for you to go out there. It's easier for you to ask for things. It's easier to accomplish things. And also you have confronted a part of yourself that's really critical. And when you acknowledge that about yourself, I think you become all the more powerful. So yeah, that's kind of
yeah.
why I do it. I just do it because I'm curious. I want to know.
Uh-huh.
Hmm.
Well, so like in my work as a sex coach, I always talk about eroticism, and
Hmm.
it's just a word to describe like feeling alive, feeling
Yeah.
authentic, feeling like yourself. And that could be like a moment of like an intense grief of crying, or it could
Hmm.
be like in a really hot sexual experience. But
Right.
I think the great thing about making erotic art, or just even
Mhm.
taking, it doesn't have to be even sexual, but like taking photos of yourself or something,
Mhm.
is that the experience, like between me and you, is that, like, because I know that you have an aesthetic
Mhm.
and there's something that you like, that is the way that you like
Yeah.
the photos to be and the
Mhm.
person to be and the shapes and the lines and all that. That, like, okay, I have to connect to that. So it's not about like
Mhm.
me showing up and being like, this is what I want. I'm going to do this. And so I want you to take it like this. I want you to
Mhm.
do it. It's right. It's like, well, I'm going to be
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
and you're going to shoot in the way that you do it.
Right.
And like, just like good sex, it's that when
Mhm.
it can happen where it's just two people are tuning to each other. I'm just going to be me. You're going to do
Yeah.
you. And yeah, we're going to talk and maybe direct a little bit and stuff. But it's
Mhm.
really about like joining those two things together to create beautiful art.
Absolutely. Like I think, I don't normally ask people to do a lot in preparation.
Yeah.
I'm probably like the most like lo-fi, like low budget queen when it comes to like
Okay.
what you're gonna be doing. It's true. It's true. It is what it is. But I think one of the things that I like to do is like I like to keep it very rudimentary because I think if I don't if I'm not putting the focus on certain things, like if it's not a big production, it feels very real. It feels very authentic to who the person is, right? And sometimes I'm not precious about anything that I do, right? Like the creativity, like at any point in time, it's happening in that moment. The joy for me is in the understanding, is in the learning. Whatever happens after, you may use those photos, you may never use those photos. God knows what will happen with those photos. I don't know. Do you want to alter those photos? Great, go ahead and do that. Like that is not where my attachment lies. I also feel like even when I do edit someone's photos after the shoot, like in my style or whatever I'm like seeing it as, I'm just doing that because I feel like I want to tell your story to you the way that I saw
Uh,
you, right? Like it's like how I examined and kind of like understood what happened in that moment in time. But the reality is like it's not like that is not the biggest that's not the biggest value for me. Like it's in the creation. Like I feel like when
uh,
I'm creating with you, to your point, like when there is a back and forth and understanding, and it feels fun and it feels safe and it feels cool, that's all that matters. Like I don't care that you like again, like I'm not going to go and like mass like build a set and do a whole thing.
yeah.
It's not my energy. It's not my
I mean,
energy.
you don't need to. I
I don't
that's
need to,
I
but
I
it's also not. It's not. It's just not who I am, right?
yeah.
Like I know. Like I think even in the beginning when I first started to even make some of this work, I was very scared to make it because I thought, oh, people are going to be so accustomed to seeing certain things where it feels overproduced and overdone. And I honestly was like, personally, like I don't watch that kind of porn. I feel like I want porn to feel very real. I want porn to feel like there are faults in everything about its
Hmm.
creation and in its process. And it should feel strange and it should feel random and it should feel funny and weird. And so that's realistically like why I went about doing it in this way. I was like, why am I like sacrificing who I am and what I
Hmm.
would watch and what I would do to just kind of appease who, right? I also feel like when
Hmm.
it comes to creation, for me specifically, I will get very frustrated very quickly if there are too many rules around it. If it feels very like, you're going to send me like a mood board and 900 things, and it's 100% the chance I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
I think too much of my life already feels very mandated to me. That
Mm.
I don't think when it comes to my creation should feel as mandated. So it should feel free form. I also want people to feel empowered by what they get at the end of the day, right? Like if you look
Hmm.
at those photos and you're feeling a certain way about yourself, even if it's just for you, that's how you should leave the space. I also think it is a very sexually charged experience. So I think people should go home feeling a little bit more like they've connected to their sexuality a little bit differently too, I think.
Hmm.
So yeah, like I just want people to have fun with it and I want it to be fun. I don't want it to feel punitive. I don't want it to feel like a task. So yeah, yeah.
Do you get people or guys
Mm,
that are like super nervous, and the reason why they're
mm,
doing this is to like really push over an edge that they haven't done
mm,
before, and they're like, I want to shoot with you because I,
yeah.
have issues with the way I see my body and feeling sexual, and I want to do this. Like, do you get that a lot?
I do, and I have. I think one of the things I've also been very, this is where I'm going to get like, it's going to appear very terrible, but,
Mhm.
I like, I have to be curious about what it is I've seen in someone for me to want to work with them.
Mhm.
And sometimes I feel like if someone is coming to me with intent, I think it makes it really hard for me to kind of make sure that I live up to whatever that experience is for them, right? Because
Mhm.
they're that element. So when people come to me and they're feeling very nervous about something, I'm always like, it doesn't even have to happen. Like we don't even have to do the shoot because I feel if you're coming in very nervous, you're not going to have fun with it. And I don't like, you're also treading such precious territory for people, right? The worst thing is that someone comes in nervous and that's already stressing them out. And then you're going to tell them, let's take a bunch of photos together where, you're partially or like fully naked, which also is going to stress them out. And then on top of that, I'm going to have to be policing and doing things in a certain way where I have to make sure that I'm not imparting more trauma onto someone who may already be battling trauma or kind of processing trauma,
Mhm.
and the experience already is traumatic as a whole. So for many reasons, it's honestly such a challenge. It is honestly such a challenge sometimes to want to try to create when you're feeling nervous. I would much rather you go away. You kind of come back to me when you're feeling like you are ready to do this. And it's literally why I make sure I really try to make sure with people, and I'm not perfect in any way, but I try to make sure with people that coming into this space, this is what to expect. Like I don't want you coming in here feeling like this is going to be a different experience because I don't know, you saw a whole bunch of stuff on the internet. Like if I'm telling you that this is what it is, that's the reality of what this is.
Mhm.
So I really hope that people who are nervous do get some value out of it. But again, it is always a minefield and you are constantly trying to navigate that minefield. I think you know this well because I think you've created and collaborated with people as well in the past. And there is, like, I'm not in your brain. I'm not in your brain. So I don't know what's happening to you, right? And if you are quiet, that's even more difficult. So I'd much rather people come, be open, be upfront, tell me exactly what's on your mind, and I will say yes or no to this. And if you're willing to work and navigate through it by being open in your communication, it's a possibility. I always tell people, I'm like, sometimes somebody will like, we live in such a weird world. It's sometimes even me existing on that platform is so weird to me because we chase after things. It is almost like we have to do all of these things to ourselves in order to, I don't know, validate ourselves in some way or to feel a certain way about ourselves. And it just is always so strange to me because I think people will want to, for example, come and, take photos with you just because they've seen 100 other people do the same thing. But if they're not ready, if they're not mentally ready to do this, and you're just doing it for the sake of doing it, I don't think that there's a value, right? I also think, it's chasing anything in that way, for me at least, doesn't hold. You're not going to grow from that experience. You're not going to get anything out of that experience. So I'd much rather people came with authenticity in terms of why they're wanting to do this. Like it's easier for me to work with someone maybe who genuinely really enjoys sex as a whole, because then it's not like this is, I'm not like pulling teeth to be like, this is what's going to
Yeah.
be, it's what's going to happen. It's because you genuinely want to be this way, right? And even when I
Mhm.
shoot someone, I don't, there's very little direction. And I think you know this. Like I shoot around you. I want you to feel like you are in your element. So there's that strange thing. And I tell people all the time, like sometimes I can be approached and someone will ask me to do something. And I'm like, I don't know how we can work together right now. But when I do, I will reach out. And that's simply because of the fact that like right now I don't know what it's going to be like. I can't foresee what that shooting experience is going to be like for both of
Mhm.
us. And I don't want to hurt anyone, and I don't want anyone to be disappointed, which is also really hard too because people are disappointed all the time, and I'm disappointed all the time too. So yeah, it's such a struggle. I would much rather people come to me and they're like, I am just genuinely a horny person who likes to have sex or wants to explore this particular element of myself, and I want to do this with you, and I trust you. Like it's such a trust thing too. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and that's why I was saying it's like it's a intimate experience
it
between
is.
you and whoever you're shooting, and
It
the
is.
feeling of feeling safe enough. I mean, anyone who when you put a camera on them, right? It's like you change all of a sudden because you know that the picture is being taken.
You're a whole other person.
But
You're
yeah, yeah. But the skill is like to be able to be like, no, I still have to be myself,
mm,
right? And I think that in this age of social media and thirst traps and OnlyFans and stuff, it's like I mean, there's so many videos of like OnlyFans where the guys are fucking and they're looking right
yeah.
at the camera. And I'm like, you're not even in the moment with the guy. You're looking at yourself on the phone. And so I'm like, how are you actually feeling in that?
Yeah.
Like, or are you in your head
Moment.
just being like, oh, how do I look? Do I look right? And it's like, we need to get back
Like
to being like, it like, I would much rather see a guy's face looking maybe stupid because he's
yeah.
so scrunched up in pleasure
Yeah.
than checking himself out and adjusting to what
Himself.
the shot, yeah, so that he looks
Yeah.
better in the shot, right?
I think it's like, and it's that. Like, I think when, like, everyone wants to have an OnlyFans type experience. I don't think everyone's ready for an OnlyFans type experience. I also think people become so anxious about these things when they realize that the work is going to be seen in the public domain the way that it is. You have to be comfortable enough to know that that's where the work is going to end up, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's like you cannot be surprised that you posted something and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my god, people actually saw it. No, people will see it. So
Yeah.
don't be surprised by that fact, and don't necessarily feel like you have to do it because that's what everyone else is doing. It's that, and it should feel real. Like I genuinely feel like going like, and I think we've talked about this before, is that for me now, it has to just feel like I'm curious about something, and I will reach out to that person and will be like, look, I'm curious to work with you because of what I've seen, right? Like we can try something out. Let's see where it goes. And then let's go with that. And that's kind of how I want it to kind of go going forward. Because again, also the onus sometimes is on me to make sure that people are okay. And I cannot fully, wholly take that responsibility with lightness. So I have to be
Mm-hmm.
smart about it and say to myself, look, these are people's feelings, these are people's lives. And I cannot just go in there and be like, this is me.
Mm-hmm.
No, there has to be like, I will have to be uh, very careful
Yeah.
about that.
It's what I say about like any type of fantasy of life
Hmm.
is that like if the fantasy is to make porn, you don't actually know how that feels.
Yeah.
And it is a skill to make porn. It is like a skill that
Yeah.
certain people have and certain people don't.
Yep.
And lots of people don't enjoy it, not because of even what other people might think, but because it's like it is hard to stay present and like
Hmm.
connected to your arousal and in the moment when
Yeah.
you have people filming you. It's a different experience that you might not enjoy,
Completely.
and that's okay, right? And if you have the fantasy of like making porn, make it at home for just for yourself and
But
like
the,
and see
no,
how that
literally,
goes.
no, but like literally that, Vance. Like at the end of
Yeah.
the day, like I think that's like sometimes even this is why I actually look for people who are couples, maybe by default, or who are actually into each other. Because if you can make it at home with someone that you genuinely care about, it will be infinitely better than something where you put two people together and you're forcing a connection and you're forcing a dynamic. Your partner already knows who you are, and you've already learned each other, and you are very connected, not just at a sexual level, but even outside of the bedroom, right? So those
Hmm.
things are really, really key. But I don't know. It's a very fascinating world that we live in right now, where this, even just sex as a whole, because it's so commodified right now, everyone wants a part of it, and not everyone is ready to kind of acknowledge the impact that it's going to have and what it means to them long term.
Yeah. I think it's
Yeah.
I mean it's an interesting place because porn is so accessible
Mm.
and especially like I was thinking about it too, just like being on Twitter, that like it's all these like 20-second, 2 minute, 1 minute clips, and it's easy to
Yeah.
just like it's a very heady process of like flipping through porn,
Yeah.
that even the other day I was like, I'm so, because I'm posting on Twitter too, that I'm like, so I see this porn every day and I'm like, it doesn't have the same effect of like, I remember being like a teenager and like seeing like getting a porn VHS and
Yeah.
like putting it
Yeah.
on and being
Yeah.
like, oh
Yeah.
my God, this is like special.
No.
This is
But
such a turn
honestly,
on and rousing. And I only have this one scene to watch. And like now it's like,
mm,
it's become so, okay, so I have this thing about like where porn is like there was a sex psychologist who said to me before I started doing porn that he was like, porn can, capitalism can get porn. And I'm like, I wonder what he means by that. And now I understand that it's like it becomes this consumerism, just like pump out the content,
Mhm.
that it becomes less like sex should be like the
Yeah.
experience of sex or even masturbating should be this like special experience
Experience.
that
Yeah.
isn't
Yep.
something that it should just be like
Yeah.
they're done, they're
Done.
got the quick high done, like it but that's what we're, and that's how it's starting to be, and we're missing the, like, if we see a thirst trap and there's like we're
Mm,
seeing hundreds of thirst trap photos in a day, and it's like we're not even stopping to be like, how does that feel in my body? Instead it's just like
exactly.
trigger dopamine, and quick
Yeah.
5-minute jerk off sessions and all this. And it's like we need to get back to a place of being like, we need to slow it down, and
Absolutely.
all of it is good. And I mean, the thing is,
Mm,
if something is going to be capitalistic, sure, I'm happy
mhm,
that porn is, but we need to be more intentional with porn for our own benefit. Like, I had someone
mm,
ask me today,
mhm.
should I stop watching, how did they put it? I stopped watching, my New Year's resolution was stop watching porn.
Okay.
Uh, will I masturbate less? And I was like, well, I don't know, up to you.
Mhm.
And then I was like, why did you stop
Possibly.
watching? Yeah, but maybe, I don't know. And then he was like, oh, I've just seen how my porn consumption and masturbation is like so tied together. And I was like, well, maybe you should try to jerk off without watching porn now, and figure out how to do it. So, because I think a lot of us are like, I can't get aroused unless I see
Mhm.
porn. And what the skill
Yeah.
also that what I teach clients to do is like try to just find that in yourself
In
using your
yourself.
body. Like, learn how to touch
Mm,
yourself, learn how to like fantasize
yeah.
in your head, so that you're not relying on porn. There's nothing wrong
Yeah.
with porn, but
Yeah.
like also know how to become aroused without it. Um,
Absolutely. And that's the thing. Like, I feel like, because you are constantly consuming it, you're becoming very desensitized to what it is. And you're always looking for what is new in it. And when it's not new, it just doesn't feel as engaging. And I also think that makes us really lose our own sense of what attraction and what sexuality means for
mhm,
us, right? Like, I keep thinking about the fact that, like, back in the day, it was really easy to be like out in the streets, and maybe you've seen someone attractive and something hot is happening in that moment in time, and you are feeling a certain way. Now that you've seen so much of it on the internet, and you're so exposed to porn, and it's so accessible, and sex is just like it's everywhere, it becomes less appealing for an encounter like that to happen, because it's almost like you're almost questioning yourself. You're like, is this actually attractive? Like, is this actually hot?
mhm.
But I've seen these like 15 videos about exactly the same thing. Like, this is
Yeah.
comparable. Does it work? Will it work out the same way? No, you also lose what you're like. We're becoming more and more conditioned to be very problematic in what attraction is to us. What a
Mhm,
man looks like and what is attractive in a man, for example, for us, is really now being conditioned by what we're seeing and what we're being mass fed, right? And
mhm,
that's a big problem. Like, now, how are you going to find people attractive? Not everyone's going to be like muscular, like 6 feet and gigantic. Like, everyone's attractive in all shapes and forms. Attraction at its rudimentary form is literally your actual energetic connection to someone. So that is really being lost, I feel like, in so many ways. So
mhm.
yeah, I don't know. It is very problematic. It's very capitalistic. It's very much out there. But also at the same time, I'm like celebrating the fact that people are actually in a weird sexual revolution where people are just feeling horny all the time and ready to kind of put themselves out there. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And also
yeah,
with that, I think there is a lot of great porn that is being made that is a bit more intentional,
yeah,
diverse,
yeah.
artistic or whatever, right? And so there is that out there too, right? I just think I think the thing, what I tell guys is you just have to understand, like, porn is, it's a movie, it's not real. Uh and it's performers, and that's the skill and the art, just like you're watching a movie. And so it's great, but don't compare yourself to it, or think that that's the way that you should be as well, right? Figure out who you
It's
are and what you like and how to. And I also
change
say it's
that.
like
Hmm.
being, hyper masculine, muscular, and perfect
Yeah.
body looking doesn't make you better in bed.
No, it doesn't. I also
So
think
it's stop
you
chasing you look for the feeling of, wow, I'm really connected to this person. And going back to, I always look for the guys that can show the cracks. It can be genuine,
yeah.
can be vulnerable, because in those moments of when, I don't know, you fart during sex, you can laugh it off and be like, oh,
Yeah.
be fine with it. Whereas a lot
Real.
of guys who are perfectionistic will be really
Mm.
will be stuck in their body to be
Yeah.
able to just let go and let whatever happens.
Yeah. It's also really boring to me when when sex with someone feels very performative. Like if you're coming
Mm.
in there and you literally are a character and it's a hookup, that's flop. Because I'm not looking to have sex with, and I don't know, like I was talking to somebody about like, with VR porn, you can literally create whatever avatar you want, your idealized avatar, and have sex with that. When you're having hook up with someone, there is such a realm of uncertainty and unknowns that makes that sex more exciting than what you're going to get on
Hmm.
VR. So if you're coming there and you're trying to be perfectly like a character, I'd much rather have VR sex than actually have sex with you. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
Okay, well, I'm gonna
that's it.
slowly start to wrap this up.
Yeah.
Or not slowly, maybe hardly wrap this up.
It's been a while. It's been long.
Yeah. So I just want to end on one
Mm,
question that
mm.
what is exciting you most about your life right now?
But is life exciting right now? No, I'm kidding. What's exciting me most about life right now is that I genuinely feel more myself than ever before. I also think more
Mm,
than anything, what's making life exciting right now is that I think who is around me and what is around me, I feel like it's feeding me in a way that's the most positive that it's been. And that's not to say that every moment is like a happy moment, which is, I mean, that's unrealistic. But I do think that, this is the most authentic self that I've ever been. And I only want to continue doing that. I only want to continuously living in this way that's very authentic to me. And I don't want to be doing things that I don't feel like I want to do, and
mm-hmm.
don't want to be a part of. Like I want to be able to like be truthful and intentional and functional, in everything I do. So that's what's exciting me the most. I love
Mm.
creating, this like creativity is everything to me in all realms. There's so many things that I'm trying to do and so much bullshit I'm putting out there. So that's what's exciting about it. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much that Kim Cattrall quote of "I don't
Mm.
want to be spending 5 seconds doing something I hate right now"
But
or
you know
whatever.
what? Like genuinely, the realization everyone should have
Yeah,
is that life is so limited, right?
yeah,
It is so limited. You cannot predict anything right now. We are living in a world where every day is literally like you're on a roller coaster. So you need to make sure that you yourself are doing right by yourself and that you have got the right things around you that will feed you, that will sustain you through
yeah,
this dynamic, right? So don't do things you don't want to be doing.
yeah,
And
yeah,
if you have control over them,
yeah, yeah.
right? And also be truthful, be honest with people. What I'm loving the most right now is that everyone that I talk to, everyone that I'm around, I genuinely love being around. I want to be around them. They make me so happy and they make me feel real. Like I feel like when I'm around
Mm,
things, I mean people, I'm the happiest that I can possibly be because
mm,
those are real things.
mm.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, that's a great note to end it off on. So,
Good.
so thank you for doing this.
No, thank you for this. It was such a pleasure. It's always such a joy talking to you. I love your authenticity. I love you how candid you are about certain things. It's really, really good. It's really refreshing. And I just love the fact that like I think you are going to give people a different approach to life. I think you're just gonna make people
Mm.
think about life as a whole a little bit differently, which is cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks.
Thank you.